back to our final segment in this series, Woman on a Mission. My name is Leslie Eddleman, and I'm author of The Faith Factor. And I just want to recap what we've discussed in the last segments. It's that we're all on a journey, we're all on a mission, or we should be on a mission to bring Christ to the world, because that's what He calls us to do. And wherever you are in your journey, just keep plowing forward. We don't ever reach perfection, although we should strive for it. Keep striving for it. Keep every day, keep turning towards Christ. As I look back in my life, I realize that no two sins are independent of each other. I realize now that all of my selfishness, all of my pride, all of my disobedience to the church, disobedience and arrogance towards God was just a culmination of one great sin, and that's pride. And we know that pride is the root of all evil. We know that. When we're prideful, we just can't be thankful. It's hard to be thankful. And when you're not thankful, and when you assume that something is owed to you all the time, like in today's society, we keep hearing how you deserve this, you deserve good things, you've earned it, well, what that does is it sets us up to think that we are somehow our own God, and we forget that everything that comes to us, we may have earned it through the gifts that God gave us, but when we get to the point to think that we can live a life without God and still be successful, we're falling into that sin of pride. And that sin of pride carries into our homes. Now, I'm an advocate for marriage. Are you an advocate for marriage? Some people will say, well, yeah, I am except in cases of this and except in cases of that. No, we women should be advocates for marriage, no matter what. Now, I know that I will get all kinds of letters about physical abuse. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking in general. We need to be strong women in the marriage. We shouldn't try to be the leader of the head of the household. We should give the household to our husbands and submit. Oh, now the letters are really come. Submit to the husbands. There can only be one boss. That's God. Serve God. Take on your role as woman and do well. Do well. All the troubles in my marriage were all stemmed from me thinking about myself, me wanting things that I wanted, me wanting to rule the roost, so to speak. Once I learned that it takes a little bit of humility, I noticed that my home was a little bit happier. I was able to get along with my husband a little bit better. You know, when you're full of pride, humility is a tough pill to swallow. God has given me some really great lessons in humility. I'm very materialistic. I used to be very materialistic, very vain. I'm having a hard time with that even now. Most women, once they get past 50, I've said this before, or past 40 even, they start really honing in on their looks because we're not like we used to be. But I have a great story of humility. I'm going to throw that in here because you'll love it. I lecture for our church, and I love to speak. I have a gift. I have a talent, and I want to use that. I truly, truly wanted to use that for the Lord. And so when I lecture, I always pray, dear Lord, just let me be invisible and just let them only hear your word. Well, after I lectured for a few years, people would compliment me and tell me how great I was, and I started to really like that. I liked that recognition. And so then I started to pay attention more about how I looked when I got up at the ambo to read. And this particular day, I was dressed in my favorite cream-colored pants, my smart matching shirt. I had my hair pulled back, just so nice so that my fake gold earrings would show forth. And to top it all off, I had these 3.5-inch heels. Well, when it was my turn to lecture, back up for a minute, I noticed that the church that day was extremely full. And I thought, wow, there's a lot of people here. So see how my ego is being fed. I'm thinking everybody's going to hear just how wonderful of a lector I am, a speaker I am. And And boy, did they. When I was going up to read, I noticed that I forgot my reading glasses. So I get halfway up to the ambo, and I whisper to the priest, I'm like, I forgot my readers. And he just nodded, and he let me go all the way back down to my seat. By the way, Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Munster is a semi-Gothic cathedral. So there was 800 people in that church or more. All right, continue the story. I get my readers. I tell myself, now I'm late, because every eye in the room is on me, and you can bet they were, because they were trying to figure out just what I was doing. So as I'm going up the steps, I realize, you're late, you better hurry. So just as I started to hurry, my foot came out of that 3.5-inch heel. Down I went onto my face. My shoe came off, it's 2 feet behind me, and as I hit the floor, I yell, ugh! And in unison, 2 seconds later, the whole congregation yells, ugh! Oh my goodness, the priest jumps up, he runs over to me, he picks me up and he says, are you okay? And all I could say to him was humility. And he just dusts me off, and I left my shoe where it landed. I clip-clopped half the way up there. One shoe on, one shoe off. My hair had come out of its holder. My bra strap was halfway down my arm. I was a mess. I get to the, oh my gosh, I can only imagine how I looked. I get to the podium to speak, and I almost had an urge to say something witty. And I tell you what, it was as if Jesus himself pinched my lips shut, and I heard loud and clear, it's not about you. And it was as if I answered, yes, sir. And I read that scripture. I didn't miss a beat. And I took my humility pill, and I turned around after it was over with, and I looked at Father and I said, humility. And he looked at me and he said, you recovered well. So then I got to go back and get my shoe. I clip-clop, bra strap down the arm, hair falling out, down to my shoe. I didn't want to just put it on in front of everybody because I didn't want to spend any more time than I had to in the bird's eye view there. So I pick up my shoe and I sat down in the pew and I said this. Now that was a little harsh. I'm always telling the Lord, show me my sins and help me overcome them, but don't be harsh. Well, to me that was a little harsh, but he got my attention. He got my attention that day, and he helped me realize that it's not about me. And we need to carry that thought over into our homes. It's not about us, because guess what? There's serious stuff going on in our homes these days. And if we're always looking in the mirror at ourselves, or if we're always in tune to ourselves, or what our needs are, we're missing the slithering of the snake into our homes. I have a great story about that. This is a true story. My grandmother that I talked about earlier, she had 13 children, but with her first child, I guess he was born in the early 40s, they kept the door, which there was an outside door to their bedroom. They kept it open at night because it was always hot. They didn't have central heat and air. So she let that door open. And when she was sleeping, she heard the baby, her first child, when he was in the cradle, she heard him gasping for air. So she got up to check on him, and inside the bassinet was a huge snake. It wasn't a python. They lived out in the country. We didn't live in Africa, but it was a huge snake. And it was coiled around the baby. Well, they were frantic. She ran to the kitchen to get a butcher knife to give it to my grandpa. My grandpa didn't know where to cut first to get the knife off of the baby, so he just started cutting it in pieces and finally freeing their infant son. Oh my gosh. First of all, I think I would have just fallen over from a heart attack if I saw my baby wrapped in a snake. But she is so wise and so faith-filled that she saw that snake for something else. She knew then, this is what she told me, she knew then that Satan would be after her children. Yes, he's after all of us. He's after all of our children. And if we don't recognize that as mothers and parents, then we're missing the boat. We're allowing him to slither into our homes. There's so much distraction now with the video games and our cell phones. And if our eyes are constantly down, we're missing what's going on in our children's lives. And we have to be diligent. We have to be diligent in keeping our children, keeping check on what our children are doing, who they're hanging around with, and what they're watching on TV. Because Satan, he gets us slowly. He gets us slowly. When we recognize sin for what it is, when we accept the teachings of the church and we pass that on to our children, we're doing our job as mothers and wives. When we fall into sin and we fall into pride and we start accepting sin for something other than sin, contraception, abortion, transgender, whatever it is, whatever the media and society is pushing, if we fall into mediocrity, if we fall into indifference, then we're letting that seep into our homes and affect our children. How can our children grow in holiness if we don't take a stand in something? And that's the beauty of our faith. You don't have to worry about what this priest thinks or what that priest thinks, or, well, if I don't like what he says, I'm going to leave the church. The church is solid, and it has an intelligible understanding of what is going on in society. And what we learned 2,000 years ago is what we're stuck to today. I had a patient one time say, a patient that challenged me on the faith, and he said, "Are y'all still going with that catechism that was written in the 90s? I said, "No, I think we're still following the catechism that started 2,000 years ago. We don't change to fall in line with society." So in our homes, be diligent. See sin for what it is. It's our job. Our children learn from us. We are the greatest social influence on our children. See a sin for a sin. See the snake for the snake. There was a good story. A friend of mine went to college with a young girl who owned a python. First of all, why would you own a python? But she owned a python. She let that snake sleep with her every night. She would let him sleep coiled up on her pillow. Okay, whatever. But she would let him sleep on her. But she loved that snake. And because she stroked and loved that snake, she assumed that that snake loved her. And then she started noticing the snake started changing its behavior. It didn't want the mice and rats that she threw into its cage anymore. And she thought, well, snake must not feel well because he's not eating. And then she noticed at night the snake must be cold because the snake has started laying long across her body and he didn't coil up anymore. So she took the snake, whom she loved, to the vet. And she explained all the symptoms that the snake was having and thought he might be sick. And the vet looked at her and he said, "Get rid of the snake. He's measuring you to eat you." She didn't recognize the python for the python. She saw the python and assumed because she loved it and cuddled it that it was good. Ladies, recognize the snake as the snake. Recognize the sin as a sin. Once we get our bearings out of whack, we don't know what is up and down. How far have our compasses turned and stood on their head to where we can't even tell our own children what gender they are? That's a whole other topic. But what kind of mother can't even give that basic truth to their children? We've got to sit up and pay attention. There's some major things going on in the world, and they just keep getting uglier and uglier. And if we're indifferent, then how will our children ever stand a chance? So, I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to light a fire under other women, and I think you should be on a mission. We all should be on a mission, just like the apostles and the disciples back in the day. It's no different for us. Well, the one difference is, thank goodness we don't have to be tortured and crucified for our beliefs. Not yet. Stand up for what you believe in. First of all, believe in something. Take a stand. Teach your children the beauty of the faith. Get them rooted, because when they leave our homes, they're out in the world, and they have to have something to stand on. They have to know what is true and what is right. Don't let the snake slither into your home. Don't turn to yourself and think about what I want, what I need. Happiness in the home only comes, true happiness only comes when you try to bring about a holy home. Strive for holiness first. Holiness doesn't sound like any fun. It is fun. It's fun because you start to be able to see things as it truly is. When you grow in holiness, you start to recognize the python that's wrapped around your neck as a python, and you're able to get rid of it. And our children learn from us. You think society has all this, we think, oh, society has so much influence on our kids. Our kids are the way they are today because of the video games they play. I doubt that. I think that is true to some degree. But the parent, I'll repeat, is the greatest social influence on the child. Where do human rights and where do all these things begin? They begin in the home. If a child doesn't learn how to respect authority, how to believe in the one God, to believe in who He is and why He was even created, it has to come from us. They're not going to learn it from anywhere else. So now I'm getting preachy, but encourage other women. Get into a faith-filled women's study group. Get to the sacraments and speak the truth. You'll be amazed at how many people love to hear the truth. You know, don't be afraid to speak the truth of the Catholic Church. This is where the truth lies, right here. We don't change it. We don't try to alter it. Like that man said, you're not running off the 1990s catechism. No. Jesus set the moral code. If we can decide what the moral code is, then we're in trouble. Our feelings can't determine what's right and what's wrong. Jesus gave us a choice. I always say this. Jesus gave us a choice to choose right or wrong. He never gave us the choice to decide what is right or wrong, because we can't decide that. Our feelings can't decide that. We have to have some basis. We have to have strict moral teaching that comes from somewhere, and we have to understand why. So, until I see you next time, go out there. We're all women on a mission. Encourage others to get back to the faith. If you have family members that have left, be gentle, be loving, and call them back home. Thank you very much.